This is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering Legion, Season 1, Episode 6, Chapter 6. In this episode, the gang is trapped in a mental hospital. But not really in a mental hospital. Welcome to Unspoiled.
Happy Jack wasn't old, but he wasn't bad. He lived in the sand at the island. The kids would all sing, he would take wrong key. So they rode on his head in the very young.
All right, welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
And I am Maggie.
And this episode was probably so far my least favorite. Not to say it was a bad one, because this show seems incapable of doing bad things. But it was certainly frustrating more so than satisfying. We got fewer answers than we ever really have, and a lot more setup. But that makes sense because there's only 2 episodes after this. So I guess we have to set up for the, the final movement, as they say. So really quickly, before we get started, I want to say hi to new patrons because we had to cut the last 2 episodes short.
My bad.
It's okay. It's all of our bad because you and I talk too much before we start.
We kind of do.
So
that's also my bad,
hello to everybody from the beginning of June. And this is all of you. Hi, Nikki Caro, Karen J. Horlocker, Natalia Shabashova, Rachel Barsness, Adam Ashraf, Yama Castillo, Robin, Bill Stokes, Megan George, Julie Thompson, Samuel Burrell, Deandra, A.F. Tanith, Tan Fazee, Renee Pope Monroe, Dawn Smith, Sarah Sanders, Simone Solar, Andrew Nguyen, Amy Lucas, Katie Hansen, Nikki Caro, Jason Abels, Reese Brown, Karen J. Horlocker. Why did I not say her name? I feel like she just came up earlier. That's weird. This is a repeat of everybody. Julie Thompson is the top of the list. Okay, so that was weird. So welcome to all you guys.
I've just heard all those names already on the other podcasts that we've done, so I'm like, oh yeah, I know that they're patrons. Why are we saying them again? But yeah, I was on 4 podcasts last week. So.
Yeah, it's that's why I have different Airtable spreads for each show so that I don't constantly repeat by accident because it is hard to know where I stopped last time. Right. And we have 2 reviews. One from Lord Hobbs, who is my boyfriend Owen. And one from KAMCS, who is our friend Krista.
Hi,
so
Krista.
Thanks, guys. Owens is just 5 stars, fantastic. My 2 favorite podcasters in the entire world are covering it because he's adorable. Yes. And then Krista's 5 stars, call me Etta James because, and then the actual body of the review, at last, in all caps. I love listening to Natasha spin her wheels trying to figure out what's going on in her first viewing of the stellar show. So thank you guys so much. And if you are listening and have been enjoying our coverage, do us a favor and leave us a review because, you can listen to this show totally for free and never have to pay us anything for it. But it'd be super sweet if you did something to show your appreciation because it helps us get new listeners, which translates to potential new patrons, which translates to actual money for me, which would be great. So yeah, go to iTunes, leave a review. Okay, that's done. Now let us get started.
All right.
So yeah, this episode starts off pretty much precisely where the last one left off. Mm-hmm. And we have everybody I guess it's not precisely because everybody had been in a group therapy session, but everyone here is almost sitting the same way that they had been, except the setting has changed and now they're sitting in the therapist's office. And who is the therapist? It's Lenny.
Hi,
what
Lenny.
name does she go by here? Dr. Did they say?
Oh, shit. Yes, they do, and I'm totally blanking on it. If it didn't show up in the closed captions, it probably doesn't, does it? Let me try and Google it.
And yeah, she is the first person that she's talking to. It's kind of a montage with like her saying something, a couple of brief responses from the person she's speaking to, and then it cuts back to her and she says something and it feels like she's still talking to the same person, but when it cuts back, it's someone else. So we start out with Melanie and her discussing her husband's death and Melanie's refusal to accept this by creating this fiction that he's locked in a cryogenic chamber, and her saying, well, you see it, right? How you're the one that's frozen. And
Melanie's twisting her hair like she's my 8-year-old child. Like she's doing this like very shy sort of like, this is her little fidget to avoid having to engage, is this little hair twiddling thing. And the doctor, she's going by Dr. Busker, by the way.
Busker. Okay.
And, the way that she says this, it all sounds really convincing. Like, yeah, that sounds super delusional. There's no way that could possibly be cryogenic chamber. What? And in a way, she is frozen. So, Lenny's not wrong.
Yep.
But at the same time, like, this is just weird astral plane gaslighting is what's happening here. It's weird to watch.
Yeah, there's a really interesting, like, because like you were saying, her twisting her hair, and she also has this, like, plastic barrette in her hair. Like, the whole thing is meant to make her look really childish, I think. She's wearing a robe that looks like 2 sizes too big for her. And... yeah, it's one of those like excellent lies that contains enough of the truth that it really like throws you off. And I love the way that Lenny reframes it and is like, okay, if I were sitting across from you saying this to you, what would you think of this? Which I'm just like, oh dear, I hate when people reframe things that way because then there's no denying. And then she says, tell me about your mother. And when the camera turns back around, we're with Ptonomy. And he is recounting in, of course, perfect detail the moment when his mother died, the exact time that it happened, the weather outside, what day of the week it was, everything. And
Lenny's like, you spend a lot of time in this memory, don't you?
Yep. Yeah, and he's trying to be like, oh, well, I just think of myself as a bit of a time traveler, And she's just like, you just need to like, move on and join the rest of the world and live. But it's another, interesting bit of the truth where why did his, because it brings up kind of an interesting question, the manifestation of people's mutations and why do they mutate in the way that they do, and does that reflect anything of their personality or vice versa? I don't know. But yeah, she says, then you see how unhealthy that is when you think she's still talking to Ptonomy, but then she just says this attachment between you, and the camera cuts back and it's the 2 Carries and they're sitting right up against each other.
And they're adorable.
Can I just
say how sweet they are in this episode and then it gets annoying at the end, but at the first half of the episode, they're so sweet. They're adorable in this episode, and I'm bummed out they get separated in the way that they do.
It's it speaks to their abilities as writers and as actors that they can have this older man and this younger girl be buddies like this and it never have the vibe of creepiness.
Nope.
Because that is where I would default if I were seeing this, for example, in a comic book.
Right.
I don't know that this would be pulled off, but seeing the way that their body language is around each other, it never feels that way,
Right. And it's almost like he's old enough to be her father, so it seems like there should be that sort of relationship, but it's not that sort of relationship either. It's just this very brother-sister sort of thing, but like close in age brother and sister sort of thing, not oh yeah, this is my brother. He's 30 years older.
Right.
Because I know people who have siblings who are considerably older than they are, and they're not super close to them like this. So, but I think, I don't know. Also, he's Mr. Noodle, so there's something very non-sexual about clowns.
Even clowns named Noodle.
Yeah. He does some clowning later on.
Yeah, he does. I was like, I was wondering if you brought that up to me last episode to prepare me for him doing clown-like stuff this episode, because I saw that and I was like, oh, there it is.
It's the clown. No, it had just been on my brain last episode. I hadn't watched this one again yet. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that they're like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's not like we're sharing a body. And she starts to say, that'd be, and they sort of like trail off. And I'm like, you're both thinking that'd be awesome. Admit it. And then Lenny says, I'm sensing a lot of hostility. And we see Walter just glaring at her, standing up. He's not even sitting in the chair. He's standing like almost facing away from her and just looking at her over his shoulder. Mm-hmm. And he goes over and touches this plaster statue that has been in the forefront of the scenes of two hands holding each other. And it really interests me what this statue means, because it's been so prominent and everyone else has been essentially ignoring it. And he is the one that she cites later as being the only one that understands how important power is. And he's the only one that looks at this statue and touches it. But the statue itself feels really benign in its design. It's just, two hands holding, one of them looking like it's helping the other up. And I don't know if that, like, what that's supposed to be. There's nothing sinister that I can think of. The way that they're positioned and the tension in the hands doesn't look like anything worrisome or threatening or anything. So I'm just feeling like this isn't an accident, but I don't really know what it is. Maybe it's her leading everyone down the wrong path?
Maybe.
Anyway. Also, it should be noted that there is a painting of trees all over the wall in the background of the office too. And her chair is green, the whole deal. It's kind of funny now when we started off this season in this mental hospital, and I was like, this hospital is really friendly and warm feeling. Look at all the trees and it's not sterile. and now I'm just like, oh, there's trees everywhere.
Not the trees.
No.
Bad trees. Those are bad trees.
So then she says, you understand that you're acting like the world is isolating you, but they aren't. You're isolating yourself. And we cut back to Sydney. Mm-hmm. And Sydney is saying that things feel not real. That she feels like she can remember a dream or something else. And it's interesting because this is the one time when Lenny gets up and she walks behind her and is drinking some water and is listening to her. And Sydney finishes saying that things don't feel real. And she just basically is like, well, time for your meds. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Everybody else, she's like having some success in convincing them of what she's saying. But Sydney, that's not working out. So let's go give you some pills, lady.
Yep.
And
she cannot get through to Sydney. I mean, Sydney is just putting up way more of a fight than I think Lenny was expecting her to.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets a little frustrated.
So she gets told to go take her pills, and she's walking towards that area and spots this weird door that has not been in that wing. And it's not like any of the other doors. It looks like an old-fashioned bedroom door, and there's light coming out from underneath it and some music even. And she walks towards it, and just as she's about to try and open it, there comes her name on the loudspeaker and saying that it's her first warning. So, yeah, she's almost there, but Lenny is just managing to keep her away from it. and keep her from talking about it, as we see later even. And then we run into Amy, who's
awful.
The worst human being. She's a nurse who is a nurse in order to exert power over people.
Yeah, she's basically Nurse Ratched.
Yeah. And she comes over here and knows that Sydney doesn't want to be touched and tells her that it's time for a spot check. Rubs her hands really deliberately all over her just to make her uncomfortable. And then smacks her ass really hard when she's done. And it's just really uncomfortable to watch, even if she didn't have this issue with being touched.
Yeah, I think it doesn't really matter. That's still horrifically inappropriate.
The whole thing was just like, and she's doing it right in front of the nurse's station, and the other nurse doesn't seem to have any problem with it. Like, doesn't say anything, doesn't interrupt, and I'm just like, someone, please?
No one.
Right? So then it's Ptonomy sitting with David, and they're having the exact same conversation that he had with Lenny in the first episode about this guy's spit.
Yep.
And David has an expression on his face occasionally throughout this, like he feels something is wrong. Yep. Like he can hear that this has happened before. Yep. There's a flicker, but he doesn't say anything. And it happens again when Ptonomy is, I think he's saying the things that Sydney had said in the first group meeting.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Where he's like, that's the illusion that if you just stand on one leg or touch your nose or whatever. And again, David it's definitely like he is kind of being a little jokey and dismissive later when he says to Sydney, deja vu, but it really seems like that's how it feels.
Yeah.
That this has happened. And I'm sure you've had that happen, right?
Oh, God, yes.
And you're just like, I swear to God, this has happened. What?
I used to have serious deja vu all the time. It was very disconcerting, and I did not enjoy it. It happens to me less now, but when I was younger, I was very much like, I've already done this. Mm-hmm. This has all happened before, and it will all happen again.
I have really, really vivid dreams, and occasionally I'll have things happen that I'm like, I dreamed this already. Yep. And I'm still not sure whether I did or not, but...
Yeah. That doesn't happen to me anymore because I don't have dreams the way that I used to, but that was totally how it was. And that was when I had the most deja vu, was when I had those super vivid dreams.
Yeah, it's supposedly, like, the medical explanation is that when you're overtired, your synapses connect incorrectly, so that what's supposed to be connecting to the part of your brain that registers a new experience is actually connecting with the memory part of your brain instead. Mm-hmm. But, I'm not a doctor. Don't quote me on that.
And that's not what's happening here.
No, it is definitely not.
Yeah.
So Sydney comes over and tries to say something about the other door, and as she's mid-sentence, Lenny walks up and gets David for his session and stares Sydney down for a second. Like, bitch, you better not. Mm-hmm. Just non-threatening enough to be like, not draw too much attention and get Sydney going, what the fuck? But just enough that Sydney looks away from her and is clearly realizing I shouldn't say anything in front of her for some reason. Mm-hmm. And it turns out David's doing great.
Yeah. With his totally incorrect diagnosis that has been made up for him. Yeah. Sure. It's really great. You're super easy to recover from manic depression if you're not actually manic depressive.
Right.
So he's doing awesome.
Yeah, so he's painting and reading and sipping tea and relaxing on couches with music, and I'm like, this looks great.
Library situation that he's existing in. Yep. It's delightful. He's got his own salon. He's just filling in.
And he's saying that his relationship with Sydney is what he thinks has stabilized him. That the difference isn't the treatment. it's her, and that she has kept him from feeling too alone. Just basically, it seems like this is all kind of bothering Sydney when he's saying it, or not Sydney, Lenny. Mm-hmm. And she interrupts with like, "Are you ever afraid you'll lose it?" Which I'm not really clear on what she's hoping for him to say here, or what her fear is. Mm-hmm. Because I interpreted what she was doing was that she was trying to sedate him and get him to feel comfortable. And whatever he thinks is causing that comfort to exist isn't really relevant. It doesn't matter. She just needs him to be placated, you know?
Right. Quiet and compliant.
Right. So I'm just not really sure about that. I mean, because later on she says to him, like, you just, I was trying to give you what you needed, but your girl, I mean, you just can't let that go. And I don't really understand. But, all right. So, lunchtime. He can't have his pie because his evil sister, Nurse Ratched, takes his pie away and won't let Sydney give him her pie. In the background...
And they've been talking earlier about how excited they were about the pie.
Right.
Patanomy knows a guy
Yep.
or something, has like a source in the kitchen who gives him inside scoop on what the food is going to be in an hour and a half. It's a really important connect to have. Mm-hmm. Somebody who can tell you about things an hour in advance.
Yep, thanks. Anything to feel like you've got some control over anything, I guess.
Right. Fair.
So when we first show up in the cafeteria, Melanie is feeding an invisible person. Carrie and Carrie are tossing food into each other's mouths. And Patanomy is just sitting with them like the boring guy he is.
Your disdain for Patanomy is entertaining to me.
He's just irritated me too many times. I can't forgive him.
You're just over it.
And David is really trying to be like, it's just pie, but he puts his head down and seems really upset. Which, dude, I feel you. I get that way about food. Don't you fucking mess with my expectations on a meal, because that will just put me into the kind of funk I don't come out of for a couple of hours.
That's true. I'll do that too.
Oh, I get so mad. And then there are times where it's like, I feel bad about how affected yesterday. One of my favorite treats is chocolate covered pretzels, those Flips pretzels.
Oh, sure.
Love them so much. And I asked Owen to get them for me last night, because he was running to the store, and he didn't read the label. So he brought home some weird caramel flavored ones that do not taste like caramel, BT dubs. Don't do it, guys. But I was like, well, because I probably eventually would have tried that because I love caramel anyway. So I didn't get mad at him or anything. It's just one of those guy things. They don't read labels. He got light salad dressing another time, and I'm just like, dude.
I can't tell you. Look, Evan will only eat one kind of muffin. I don't understand why my husband can't read the labels on the muffin trays at Wegmans and always brings home the wrong muffins. I'm like, well, you're eating these. I don't know what to tell you, man. Evan will not eat them. I don't want them. I'm not the one who bought them. I don't like them either. You have to eat these apple, carrot, whatever nonsense things are that you got because you're 38 years old and you can't read words. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things that I just maybe it's that I've had that kind of thing happen enough that I get paranoid now, and I'm reading right away. I'm just but yeah, it's very much a dude thing. Brendan would constantly do that. My dad would do that all the time. Just grab whatever, be like, yeah, that's vaguely the same color label, I guess.
God, the time he came home with non-sugar-free popsicles, I almost kicked him out of the house. I was like, what are you doing to me? Because I didn't realize until after the children had already eaten 6 each because that's what they do. If we get popsicles, they just slam those things. And I'm like, it's fine. It's got weird dyes and that's poisonous or whatever. But, at least there's no sugar, so they won't get hyperactive. And then, they're eating these popsicles and they start jumping off the walls. And I'm like, the fuck? And I go look at the box and I'm like, how? How do you not notice that? How is that not a thing that occurs to you when we want to desperately limit the amount of sugar these children get? Because otherwise they are nuts. I know science says that that's not actually a thing, but it's totally a thing. Anybody who says that children do not get hyperactive when they have a lot of sugar is crazy. No, sorry. It's just, it is what it is. I don't care. I don't care about data. I don't care about experiments. I care about lived experience. And yeah.
I don't know, Maggie. Sounds anecdotal.
Whatever. I don't care. I do not care. I'm a skeptic about everything but this topic. Sugar causes hyperactivity in my children.
Yeah.
I don't know about your kids, but it doesn't mind.
Owen has started to just take pictures of things when he's at the store and text it to me and be like, is this the one? Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, you know what? It doesn't feel like it should be necessary, but fine. If that's what it takes, okay, sure.
I will text pictures of boxes to both my husband and my father if they go to the grocery store. I'm like, it has to look exactly like this. Or one time with my dad, I was like, there might be a variant of this that looks like it's a frozen pizza that has a football on the box because it's football season. That's fine. That's the same kind of pizza. Don't get worried.
Right.
Don't get flustered.
Yeah, that's something that you kind of want to go to these companies and be like, stop confusing our dudes. Don't just keep your label. Just stop it, okay? Anyway, so back to the scene. We got way too sidetracked, but she's eating the pie and looks down and there are a bunch of bugs all over it and she flips out and throws it and spits the piece out and there are no bugs. No. She's yelling about bugs, but they're not there.
Yeah, you gotta love that, the girl screaming just bugs, 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 bugs in the mental institution. Everybody's like, okay. Sure.
I love that. There's a couple people who are kind of laughing and they look over, but it's nothing. Everybody's like, yeah, well, that's going to happen.
Sometimes you just see bugs.
And then we see the zoom in on the pie and there's Lenny's face and it's a new dawn. It's a new day. And she's stretching her neck and feeling really good. Mm-hmm. Burner.
So they just used this same song in the last episode of Handmaid's Tale that came out yesterday. But it's not this remix. This is this techno remix that kicks in
I think
a little bit later.
Dubstep.
Yeah, it's the Bass Nectar remix.
Okay.
But yeah, so it was just funny because I'd forgotten that this was the song that they used. I remember the scene, but I just didn't remember the song. And I was like, wait, I just heard this. Some handmaids were strutting their stuff.
Yeah, it's funny because I watched this during the day, and then that evening, Owen and I watched something, and they used this song. So I guess a lot of things have been using it. I don't remember what it even was, but... and yeah, there's this long dance sequence.
Uh-huh.
And she's basically redecorating David's brain.
Yep.
Going through all of his memories and fucking shit up and throwing things around and just invading his space and totally gleeful and excited at the unrestricted control that she has now. And she's wearing this leotard and heels and there's this
a garter belt sort of thing happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
And I mentioned on Facebook yesterday, her eyebrows in this episode, her whole look top to toe is phenomenal, but I was hypnotized by her eyebrows in the first couple scenes of this. I was just those the flat top of the glasses with the dramatic arch of her brows. And those are straight up her brows. I really don't, I think there's hardly any pencil in those things at all. That's just what her eyebrows are like. And they've just been waxed to perfection. And I'm
yeah,
I love other girls with big eyebrows. It makes me happy.
I wish that I had more. I've said this before. And yeah, it's especially if with those glasses in particular, it just tops them off in this perfect way.
Yeah.
Her hair and everything, it's amazing.
Yeah. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Who fucking knew that Aubrey Plaza could do this?
Oh, and Krista commented that it was originally a role intended for a man.
Yep.
And then they were like, no, Aubrey's great. And they just changed the pronouns and that was it.
Yep.
And I'm like, see, guys, oftentimes it doesn't fucking matter.
It really does not matter.
Just let people do their thing.
Right.
So David goes to see Sydney, and it's like basically in reverse of the scene where he was in bed and she snuck in. Mm-hmm. And he gets into bed with her, and she basically is like, what are we doing? Aren't we gonna like try and get better and get the fuck out of here? And he's like, I'm fine with staying here. This seems great. What's the big deal? And she's like, that's not... You want to grow old in a mental hospital? Mm. I want to get out. I don't want to stay here. And he says, not even for me? And she doesn't answer him. Right. And I was like, ugh, what a dude response.
Right. Like, no, she wants you to get better for you too, dude. Like, you're being ridiculous.
Yep.
Your answer is ridiculous, and then your response to her answer is ridiculous. So, shut up.
Yep.
God damn it, David. Because this is you now. This is not any of Lenny's words coming out of your mouth, other than the fact that she's like totally gaslighting you and messing with you. But like, you're the one who said that. You're not possessed. You're just being a dick. Mm-hmm. I'm less likely to forgive you for just being a freelance dick. Not actually actively being influenced by, the malevolent parasite that lives inside of you.
So the crew is all sitting in like the lobby area. Melanie's like, oh, it's such a beautiful day. Have you ever seen the sky so blue?
Yeah, it's so weird watching her like this.
I don't know what to think of it, because it's like, they ask her what she dreams about and she just says love. And I'm like, what does that even mean? What does that even mean? Is that like I'm having sex? Is that I feel just a vague sense of love? Is it I dream about my husband who died? Is it like, it doesn't mean anything. No. And the two Carries are playing checkers against one another, and they're talking, like they're reciting to each other different types of medicine.
Right. Can I tell you my funny quibble with this scene? So apparently this, I guess it has something to do with each move that they make on the checkers board, because they're playing checkers. Mm-hmm. But I got really irritated the first time I watched this, because I was like, some of them that they're saying are generic names and some of them are brand names. I'm not enjoying this inconsistency.
Oh my God, you were such a nerd.
I'm a psych meds nerd. Like, what can I say? I've taken half of these things. So I'm like, you can't say duloxetine and then say Geodon. Like, no.
Maybe that's the game.
No,
maybe one of them's saying a brand name and the other one has to say the generic name.
No, but they don't match up.
What is the game then?
I don't know. They're just trying to say whatever they can.
Is that it?
I don't know.
Because he says we're exercising our minds, and that doesn't feel like much of an exercise. That's just like, let's name 12 fruits. Like,
no, because, Geodon is Ziprasidone. They don't say Ziprasidone at any point.
Well, their games, we get to their game after it started, and Sydney interrupts it before it's finished.
That's, okay, fine. But I was still just like, you can't say, they said, what did they say? They say clonidine and duloxetine, and then they say Geodon, and I'm like, those aren't even in the same family.
Yeah, he says that one of them is an injectable, but I'll allow it. So anyway, Sydney comes and tells them about her dream, that we're in a room that isn't a room, and we're all dead, but we just don't know it yet. And there's this moment where she looks down and sees this book sitting next to him and just picks it up out of curiosity. And Amy walks past them and they all tense up and like look over their shoulders at her and wait for her to go by before they relax again. Mm-hmm. And he starts talking about the fact that he dreamed of a huge ice cube. And Carrie, she's like, I dreamed, and she's like, do you remember that movie 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea? And I found this really weird because she asks him if he remembers it, but she doesn't say why that's relevant to the dream that she had. She never actually explains what she dreamed. She just asks him that and then asks Melanie what she dreamed. So it's just kind of a weird conversation where everybody's like just generally talking but not really like interacting. It's just kind of weird. And then Sydney asks, have you guys noticed the door in the hall? It's not always there. And I love that they're not like, that's impossible. Carrie's first response, she says, well, then where is it when it's not here? Which I think is a great question. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, reasonable. And she asks what feels like a rhetorical question. How can a door be there and not be there at the same time? Mm-hmm. And Carrie says, well, it could be a couple of things. And he cites some things like, he says a disparity in placement in 4-dimensional geometry. I think what he says. Mm-hmm. And I think he says something about like different dimensions also. And then he's like, or you just made a mistake, which I really like that he goes first with the two more fantastical ideas. Like and then drops that like really simple one at the end. Like, I mean, it could be that too, but probably more likely it's the other two things. Alternate dimensions and then physical displacement rooted in 4-dimensional geometry. Or simpler still, the subject is making a mistake. And she says, I didn't make it up. And he's like, no, not making it up. You just made a mistake. You got confused because all the halls look alike and you think that there's one that's... And I just really enjoy the way that they all like very seriously answer this crazy question that she's asking and listen to her and acknowledge that what she's saying in a very like matter of fact way, as if of course what you're saying is probably true. So let's address that. This little group, you're delightful.
They are.
So then we had a weird moment of the two Carries. They're walking down the hall and he's pulling out this like enormous scarf that's I think about 35 feet long.
Pretty long. Goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah, dude. And he has to go to the bathroom. A nice little callback to her saying that she doesn't know what goes on in there and she doesn't take part in that part of being alive. And she's waiting out in the hallway for him, looking very uncomfortable with being by herself. Her shoulders are shifting. She's like bouncing from one foot to the other and just kind of wriggling in this way as if her clothes are super itchy or something.
Yeah.
I really like this detail. And Walter is just staring at her like a fucking creep. Yeah. And it's like she can feel him staring, but she doesn't like really turn her head until he's gone. And she senses that somebody was there because when Carrie comes out and taps her on the shoulder, she like turns around and grabs his arm in this position where if she had applied enough force, I think she could have broken it.
Yeah. Or
broken his wrist or something. And she apologizes and he's coming to drop her off in her room to sleep. And the fact that they have to sleep in separate beds obviously causes them a lot of pain.
Yeah.
It's really like so sweet and hard to watch. He goes into the room next to her after assuring her that like if there's any problem, just knock on the wall. And there's this weird like it almost looks like a plastic wall between the two of them where the light shines between their two rooms. Yeah. And the way the wall is designed, it's covered in those circles, that circle pattern, but it almost looks like giant bubble wrap in a way. And she knocks on the wall anyway, just to like say goodnight, basically. And he smiles and he turns the lamp off, and these two are just like so adorable. How can you be so cute? This is such a weird situation to make it so cute. How dare you? And he falls into a dream, or it's actually happening. It's hard to tell.
That's sort of, I mean, they're in a dream almost already, so like, how do you even delineate it?
Yeah, exactly. And there's a giant floating ice cube emitting all of this like greenish light above his head. Mm-hmm. And he reaches up towards it, and there's this like weird, there's like a whooshing sound, and there's like a cracking sound the way that ice cracks when you put it into a glass.
Yeah.
And as he's reaching up, the bed falls away from behind him, and we're in the astral plane with all of the floating green sparks and the forest around him. And there's the dude in the suit from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And Carrie's face is busted up, and he's in his suit again. And he looks like he did when we left him.
Right.
And he tries to speak to him in several different languages. None of them apparently work out. And this guy motions to him to come with him. Oh, wait a second. Okay, so remember when we first meet her husband, mm-hmm. and he's motioning for David to follow him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is he wearing a suit out here when David can just walk out of there without a suit? And it's no big deal. And he's hanging out without a suit himself, and it's no big deal. Is it to protect against this growth that's like hanging out in the astral plane? Like it can't get him when he's in his little domain, but maybe it can get him when he's at large out in the general world.
I don't know. I mean, it could be. It seems like the astral plane is so ill-defined, mm-hmm. and you know how he and David are accessing the same astral plane, and whether if he and David aren't connected, like if David isn't in the astral plane, can Lenny be in there and able to get to Oliver if he's not protected? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question per se. And, but yeah, I mean, or it could just be like, hey, we'll put him in a funny suit so that later when, he comes to Melanie, she'll think it's her husband, but it's not, it's Carrie. How can we accomplish that? Funny suit.
Oh my God. It's messed up.
Just a thought. I don't know. Could go either way.
Yeah, I wonder. Well, he follows this dude, and then we cut to David and Sydney, and he's painting her, and she is talking about her feeling lately that this place isn't real, that there's a door that's not always there, and that she's reading a book about dream states and memory palaces and this idea of how maybe this place is a version of reality, but not reality itself. Mm-hmm. And David's listening with this extremely concerned expression. And then he says, just be careful. And she says, why? And he's like, well, you know, with your diagnosis, if they hear you talking like this, they might up your meds. And she's like, what the fuck does this have to do with me not wanting to be touched? And he's like, well, what do you mean touched? And she's like, that's why I'm here. And he's like, you're schizophrenic. And she just starts to really freak out. Like, this in particular, I think, is the first time that David has been directly involved in something feeling off. And she has just taken it for granted in this state that, because she, I guess, has been here before, that it was the same diagnosis. And for some reason, I guess for David's benefit, Lenny has changed the situation to be that she's schizophrenic. I'm guessing for David, so that he has a reason to doubt what Sydney says.
Right.
But she, like, this really messes her up when he says this. And she finally is just like, you know what? I gotta go. And he tries to be like, no, come on. It's like, you're so much better. Don't you remember? And he tells, because she says, you're the one who's schizophrenic. And he's like, no, I'm manic depressive, except like even more so, ups and downs. And remember, I tried to kill myself. And she's like, no, okay, I'm leaving. And when she leaves, out in the hallway, there's this like huge pulsing sore on the wall. This is so gross. This is the grossest.
Yeah.
I hate it. And she reaches out and touches it, and all of a sudden, everything comes back. It's...
So the first thing she sees is Lenny frozen in the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And then she just starts running through everything else.
Yeah. And then Lenny's there, and she like jumps and almost hits the ceiling. And for some reason, Lenny's like, oh, I found had some success with music therapy. Why don't you listen to this? And she tries feebly to be like, no, I gotta go to bed. And Lenny's like, no. Put these on. Oh, Sydney, don't do it. Why are you doing it?
Yeah, I don't understand.
Because it feels like if she remembered, she should be... Maybe she only partially remembered, I guess.
Yeah.
And the sound of crickets is... She's asking, like, what is it? And when Lenny says crickets, she, like, kind of laughs. Which... Is it a laugh because it's, like, supposed to be that crickets are basically... your mind going blank? I feel like in a cartoon kind of way. I don't know, but there was just something about the way that she laughed there, and I was like, I don't like it. And she just kind of drops her fingers, and the camera turns, and as she had done that, Sydney's eyes close, and all of a sudden she's back in bed. Now, I've said that this is my least favorite episode. And this sequence is part of why.
Well, you don't like the sort of floating upside down and backwards into the bed and then tucking her into her blanket?
If this hadn't taken 10 full minutes.
Yeah.
This took so long. Mm-hmm. Like, this show is never a show that I space out and, like, start doing other things. But all of a sudden, I realized that I had picked up my phone and started checking Facebook during this scene, because why does it need to take this long? Like, we get what you're doing. She's going back into bed, but just cut it to like less than half the time even that it takes. It just goes on forever.
Kind of does, yeah.
Like I'm watching it right now, and when I started talking about it, that scene had already been going for a few seconds, and it's just finishing right now, right there. That's when the blanket just went over her.
Yeah,
that's too long.
That is usually too long.
Then we have this like slow pan to everybody else where we see Ptonomy, and he's laying in bed asleep, and then we go into his memory of him seeing his mom fall down dead. I don't remember if we actually find out what killed her, but I'm assuming it was a stroke or a blood clot or aneurysm or something. And then we go through the wall to Carrie, and for some reason, Carrie is like laying on top of her covers in this very stiff mummy-like way. Mm-hmm. And she wakes up abruptly and goes to see if Carrie is next door. She knocks on the door or on the wall. There's no response. And then she goes to find him. And when she turns to leave, Walter's in the doorway.
Ooh.
Walter's so creepy, dude.
It's so creepy.
I want to know what his deal is with targeting her specifically. Because it's super... Everything about it is weird. He said, first of all, he looks at her and says young, not too young. And I'm thinking when he reaches out and grabs her zipper that he's going to try and undress her. But then he pulls the zipper up and basically dresses her more. Which I'm like, I don't. And then he says, did you ever eat an animal that was still living? And I'm like, what kind of question even is that? What are you even talking about? And he says there's a smell to it, a heat. And he puts his hand to her head and says, you're burning up. And she runs out of there and she's screaming for Carrie and crying. And he follows her really, really slowly while he's eating this apple and says, you can run, my love, but there's just no place to go. And I'm like, what is the deal here?
Yeah. And I don't love this sequence in general because I don't love seeing one of our female characters who has been shown to have a ton of physicality and agency and the ability to protect herself. Mm-hmm. Literally, like, she looks like a victim in a horror movie who's been hobbled and she's trying to run through the hallways, but she's in too much pain and the murder is slowly creeping up beside her. And I'm like, it's kind of boring, guys.
Yeah. It's like, I like the hobbled aspect in that I feel like it's because Carrie's gone.
Yeah.
Like, she's in pain without him there. But I just don't understand. Like, Walter's gone after everybody. Why is it her specifically that he's going after here? What is that? And why, when she says specifically, she almost like grabs and breaks Carrie's arm. And she tells Walter, I bite, when he starts to come up to her. And then he like touches her and is weird with her and she doesn't defend herself in any way. Which I just kind of wanted her to do anything because we know she can.
Right. And
she warns him that she will, but then she just runs. I don't know. I don't get it. And David, all of a sudden we cut from him to, or from her running down the hallway. It cuts away to him walking. And I'm like, okay, so he's awake through all that. Like, I don't feel like it's a time jump. Maybe this is part of him, like, being asleep. And he sees the door that Sydney had described. And he, like, gets this look on his face as he realizes that she was not full of shit. And he walks up to it, just about to open it. And here comes Amy. Nobody wants you here. This is the weirdest scene. It's not completely, like, badly written because she's saying the things that all of our voices in our heads usually tell us.
Excuse me.
Unless you're like a huge narcissist or, you know, whatever, have some probably a kind of, like, you know,
serious
personality disorder, or just a kind of confidence that many of us simply cannot relate to unless we say that it's a personality disorder. But it's the nobody wants you here. Your friends only pretend to like you. We just have to hide the fact that every time you're around, it's everything that we can do not to throw up. You're a freak, you're disgusting, and you've known it and felt it your entire life. And we adopt you because we have to. And as she says this, like, keep from puking whenever you're around, she starts to, like, pantomime puking and retching in this really, like, intense way that almost makes him start to throw up.
Yeah.
Like, it's really weird. What?
I know people who are like that, though. Like, they can't look at people vomiting or pretending to vomit without wanting to vomit themselves.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I understand that. It's just like the whole, you know? And, like, he walks away and she doesn't say anything. She just keeps pretending to throw up as he walks away, which I'm just like, what? So, okay. So he walks away and then we go to Melanie. Melanie is watering some flowers that are, like, literally blooming like magic as she's watering them. And when the camera pulls back and shows her, like, smiling fondly down at her flowers, that dude is in the background.
Excuse me. Yeah, the guy in the tree.
Yeah, and he's holding a little owl-shaped planter with vines in it. That's like watching her.
Yeah, I was looking for that guy earlier when we ended up back in here because we talked about the tree imagery in the last episode. And I'm like, okay, I want to see if the guy in the tree is still there because, like, what if he wasn't real? Would he still be able to be there? Like, I was just sort of like, I feel like knowing if that guy is there will give me perspective going forward. But yeah, there he is.
Yeah.
You're still hanging out. Painted
Yeah,
like
I'm not sure about like what he's supposed to mean. If he is like meant to represent Lenny, or if he is just another thing, a different separate thing.
No.
But we cut from her there in this bizarre moment, you know, just, and then all of a sudden she's in her bedroom and she's kneeling and praying. And this is the kind of like, why did we see the flower thing? Like, it felt weirdly disconnected. Do you know what I mean? And then,
do you think that's on purpose? Do you think it's supposed to feel weirdly disconnected to just sort of reinforce how disconnected and confused they're all feeling?
Maybe, but she doesn't seem to be feeling that way.
No.
Like when she gets up after she sees what I think is Carrie standing there waving to her, there's no expression on her face like, oh shit, where am I? What's happening?
No.
It feels like I missed something, you know? Which maybe that's the point, but I don't know. This, like, just the whole way that this is edited for me just didn't quite work. And she goes up to the wall where he is, and it appears to be solid again. But she's got total faith, and she just says, I'm on my way, and puts her hand on the wall, and there's this really cool effect where the wall, like, bends like it's pudding.
Yeah.
I really liked this.
Yeah, I did too.
And she slowly pushes her way through it, and then she is on the other side in this, like, long hallway that reminds me of where David went up against D3. Like, it looks kind of like that. And there's a flashing light at the end and this huge, like, sealed door, like a submarine. And she goes inside, and I love that when it's, like, tense music on the subtitles.
I know, isn't that great?
And when she goes in, it is the scene that they had just left. And she is walking out of the mirror that Lenny had walked out of. Yeah. So that's kind of neat. I love that she came through the same way. Like, that mirror is just part of... It's not that necessarily... It could be that Lenny has a, you know, power that can allow her to go through any wall anywhere. But I like the idea that there's just this one door, and she used the door that everybody has to use. I think I like it because it implies that her powers are a little bit limited, and I need that to cling to, that she can't just do anything.
She's not completely omnipotent.
Right?
We're so fucked.
Yeah. And her husband is standing there. I think this is her husband now, because it seems like he's wearing different clothes, like, on the bottom. But he's pointing at Sydney and David and at the bullets. And they're hovering in midair, going really slowly, basically almost completely stopped, but not quite stopped. And she thinks that's what she maybe is supposed to do, is like get rid of the bullets, but she tries to touch them and they're red hot. Right. And then she tries to shove Sydney and David out of the way, and she can't do that either. Right. So
she's just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, I don't either. Like, because I assumed the same thing, just get them out of the way, right? But it can't just be that. And I'm realizing, actually, that in the scene, because the camera pulls off to the side, and we see these two eyes open and look at her.
That effect.
Yeah. And
Not enjoyed that.
if you look down, David's sister has her hand pressed to the mirror, like it's starting to go through. So maybe that's part of why she's such a like malevolent force within the dream, is that she's already started to go over once this all gets initiated. But yeah, it looks like she had, because when Sydney first shows up, she's just sitting cross-legged in front of the mirror staring into it. And so somewhere throughout that scene of everything going down, she turned and started to push through the mirror. And then we cut from her getting watched by the giant eyes in the wall to Lenny talking to David. I'm starting to wonder if she's really the right girl for you. Do you know what love is? A chemical. Electrons in your brain sending signals. And then she says, are you familiar with Ophiocordyceps unilateralis?
Sure. Who isn't?
And he just like doesn't answer, because he came in and asked if she knew where Sydney was. And she goes on with this story about ants and spores, and he just ends it with a simple, I haven't seen her, would have been fine. Which I just loved so much. But yeah, the whole thing behind this is that there is a parasite that basically attaches itself. It's a fungus that infects ants, takes over their nervous system, and it forces them to climb to a high point on a tree, grows up out of the top of its head like a branch, kills them, of course, and then blooms and like flowers kind of and spreads spores to infect all other ants. And she says, when I think of love, that's what I think of.
And in the meantime, they show us as almost a still shot, but then you see of an ant and this thing growing up through its head. They show that a couple times.
Yep.
I'm like, yay, they're going to show the ant spore branch head thing again. Yay.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to take a screenshot of this because in the corner, so there has been in multiple scenes this kind of weird artwork where it's like a person, but they're out of focus. And it's a huge photo. And I feel like this was in a couple of different scenes, and I couldn't figure out really what the significance was of it, because it's very striking and attention grabbing. So I believe I'm supposed to notice it, but I couldn't really. And in this scene, when the camera turns over to Lenny, the way that the reflection of David is in the mirror behind her, you can see the photo reflected standing over him in this really creepy way.
Yeah. Huh.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
And like I said, I'm not sure, but it's just the way that she's looking at him in that moment, and the way that this it feels like there's a shadow somehow in this room. Yeah, it's just kind of bugging me out a little bit. But I noticed it a few episodes ago. I don't remember exactly what scene it was in, because I thought it was a really strange choice to have something that evocative and kind of unsettling in a room meant for mental health and people who are a bit unstable. So yeah, it's kind of a strange choice. But she then asks him, what's the point of life? And he says, well, you tell me. And she says, God matters. And do you know why? Because of power.
And that's when she puts her foot basically almost right on its dick.
Yup. I don't think almost. I'm pretty sure it is.
I think like the toe touched it, but I don't think it got all the way down because he flinches, but he doesn't actually like shout out.
He doesn't. But it seems like it's just because she's not putting pressure on, because the whole ball of her foot is covering his entire crotch.
Okay. So it's just that she's not pressing down.
Yeah, it's really like, I'm screenshotting this too because I'm loving the look on his face. We just watched a episode of Orphan Black a couple weeks ago where she's one of them has to be a bit of a dominatrix and does this to a dude, and he literally looks like he's gonna come in his pants when she does it, and I'm just like, what an odd thing. But I love that I took the screenshot and it's her foot on his crotch, and then it just says power.
Power, yeah.
And that's when she says Walter understands that. This is the point of what you call life. And what is Walter's deal then?
No.
What has she done? This worries me. I don't like it. Oh, shit. Okay, never mind. But yeah, we cut to his eyes, Walter's eyes staring at us. And it's Carrie again, like down the hallway. And he's behind her whistling Three Blind Mice. And David almost turns back to Lenny like he can hear this happening. Mm-hmm. Like he got distracted for a second by the scene that's unfolding, like he was watching it. But she gets his attention back pretty efficiently by telling him that she knew his dad, his real dad, the one that gave him up. What?
Yep.
What? And she says, he thought he could hide you from me, but he was wrong. I found you. And she said that his father always acted so holy, but in the end, I still found you. Ew.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
You have any guesses on who the dad is?
No.
It seems the dad seems to now be suddenly significant.
Is it like somebody that I've met already, or is it somebody that I should know about?
It is a name that you know from something. That's all I'm giving you.
It's not Dr. X.
It's a name you know from somewhere, and you know that is all I can say.
Huh. Because he's the one that I always picture acting so holy.
That's fair.
Yeah. All right.
He does tend to kind of come off as, you've seen Logan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they deal a lot with that about Professor X in that movie, so I can see that as being a good description of him. Acting so holy. You think you always know what's best, don't you, James McAvoy?
He was a fun choice for that. Kind of weird, but I like it.
I love James McAvoy, so I'm happy with it.
He's got something. He's got it.
I know. How does he have that something? He's kind of bug-eyed.
Yeah, he's real weird looking objectively, and then you see him in action, and you're kind of like, "Oh, what's up?"
Oh, yep. That's exactly my feeling about him. Was the first time I saw him, I was like, "Really, that guy we're putting in things? Mm-hmm. Wasn't he like in the Narnia movies as a satyr
I
or
forgot
something?"
about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, he wasn't he Mr. Tumnus?
Yeah, he was.
Oh yeah, satyr. Yeah, I'm thinking the other one with the horse. Centaur.
So But then I saw him in, of all things, Last King of Scotland, and he has a couple real good sex scenes in that movie. Of all the movies, to be like, ooh, sexy sex scene in the movie about Idi Amin torturing and murdering people. But ooh, sexy. Like, hey, this guy's going somewhere.
So, all right, back to this.
So
she's straddling him, and she's like, yeah, I thought that I was just going to have to ditch you because I'd kill you. But it turns out you're super powerful. And like, you plus me? This could be amazing. We could give God a run for his money. But then all this love bullshit, I'm beginning to think I have to go it alone. And she, like, grabs his face and turns it like there's a camera playing this scene on the wall beside them. And she's like, are you aware what happens to you if it turns out I have to ditch you? And it's the ant again, getting its head busted open. And he just asks her, what did you do to Sid? And she's like, oh God, shut up. And she does this thing where she grabs him by the throat, she flips over so that her back is a bit against his chest, and starts like rubbing her body against him. And she says, I let you have your friends and your woman. And as she's saying this, she's like rubbing, and he looks like he's choking to death. Like she's burrowing into him while this is happening. Honestly, all I need from you is your body. Your mind, well, I could give a shit about your mind. And as she drops out of sight from the camera spins, and he is locked in a tiny box and is like being dropped into the sunken place.
Yes, it is. It's totally the sunken place.
Yep.
Did we let him into the sunken place?
That is a Get Out joke for those of you who have not seen it. What the fuck is wrong with you? Go see it.
Go see it. A friend of mine saw it last night and wrote to me and was like, that was the best movie I've seen in years, but my judgment may be colored by the fact that I haven't seen anything but children's animated movies in like the last 5 years. And I'm like, you thought it was better than Ice Age 5? And he's like, well, it's different from Ice Age 5. I don't know if I can say better. They're just such, objectively different movies. Parent humor. That's how we entertain ourselves.
It's like when Owen hasn't seen it yet.
Owen.
I know. I've tried to get him to see it because I think it was on Hulu or Amazon or Netflix somewhere that we could have watched it. And I've been trying to convince him to watch it, and he keeps being like, it's going to be too depressing. And I'm like, it's not. Like, it's upsetting, but it's upsetting in like a very well done and not at all sort of like gross, or you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I just thought it hit this perfect note of like totally rewatchable. It's not the kind of thing that I'm like dreading seeing again.
Oh no, I would totally watch it again.
Yeah. So I'm really,
so well
Owen,
done.
if you're listening, seriously, just watch the damn movie.
Yeah, come on, Owen.
Come on.
Everybody tell Owen, come on. Get with the times. Watch the movie.
So, as he's dropping away in his little coffin, some dude in one of those suits comes into Sydney's room and takes the headphones off her head, and it is Carrie. He opens the little porthole in the front of his helmet and smiles at her and points to his own face and is like, look, it's me. I'm the one. Like, he's so excited. And he just motions.
I got a suit.
Right? And he just motions for her to follow him. And that is the end of the episode. Well, shit. We actually got through talking about this one in like an hour. I think that's a record.
Because, that is definitely a record. And it's, at least partially because I think for me it was also a very frustrating episode, which isn't to say I didn't like it. But, I'm excited for next week's. My favorite part of this episode was basically just Aubrey Plaza. Everything Aubrey Plaza did in this episode was, like, bonkers amazing. She is just going for it. I swear to God. It's absurd. She's just not... She's not messing around.
She's not holding back. So, all right. I don't really have anything to add. I just wanted to let everybody know that we did an episode on Wonder Woman last week, and I have put it out there as a reward for anyone who signs up for the Unspoiled Network newsletter, which you can sign up for on Facebook at facebook.com/unspoiledpod. Click sign up, and you will be given a confirmation link to just click to make sure that you have signed up completely. And once you get that done, you'll get an email with a link to download the 2-hour-long Wonder Woman episode. So, yeah, y'all should do that. I feel like it's a pretty good trade. Me getting your email address for you getting 2 hours of awesome content of me, Maggie, and Owen talking about Wonder Woman, which was super fun.
Yeah. Which we liked all but the end of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And from what I hear...
We rag on the end of it a fair amount.
Yes. And from what I hear, a lot of people are in agreement with us on that.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying, like, this is some, amazing observation we've made that the end of the movie is kind of crap.
Right.
I'm just saying that on re-listen, I was like, wow, we kind of tore the ending into one.
That's like, because that's pretty much the only, like, so much of it, I'm not saying that this is a perfect movie by any means, but so much of it is so much fun and so well done. And that was consistently the only thing that I saw a lot of people having an issue with, was just kind of like, what was that? Yeah. Why'd you do it?
Is that necessary? I don't think so.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to mention. And thank you all so much for listening. I hope you've been enjoying our coverage of this. I can't believe there's only 2 episodes left.
I can't believe they haven't expired off Hulu.
I know. We were all paranoid that was going to happen, and we even considered doing accelerated coverage. I'm so glad we didn't. Can you imagine how pissed I'd be?
Oh, I'd be so pissed.
Oh, I would be so mad.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're still up, and it looks like we're going to be able to make it to the end of coverage, and they're just still going to be there. So we'll see.
Yeah, go watch the next one right away.
I am absolutely doing that. 100%.
In case they disappear.
All right, guys. Well, thank you again so much for listening. I love you all. Please go and leave a review on iTunes if you can. If you're interested in becoming a patron, go to patreon.com/unspoiledpod. Or no, patreon.com/unspoiled.
Mm-hmm.
No pod.
No pod.
And also, you can support the show by going and shopping on Amazon using our link, unspoiledpodcast.com/Amazon. Yay. Do that. Bookmark it. Use it to shop always. And that's about it. Anything you'd like to add, ma'am?
Nope.
All right. Thank
I'm
you all.
on this week's episode of The Constant. Let's go listen to the episode of The Constant.
Okay. The Constant, guys, is one of the other Unspoiled Network shows, and that is covering Lost.
Yeah.
And that's Krista and Jamie, and they're also just have started covering...
Vampire Diaries.
Yeah, which... Lost is a show that I'm not particularly interested in revisiting, but I'll probably listen to their episodes on Vampire Diaries because that show is hilarious. And not in a bad way. It's very enjoyable. It's just, for what it is what it is. And I'm totally okay with that. So yeah, guys, check out those shows. All right. We will see you next week with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.